Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. Our opening hymn this morning is "The Church Where Love Lives" by Amanda Udis Kessler, and the words will be projected up on the screen. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand, embody your spirit, and join us in singing the hymn, "The Church Where Love Lives" by Amanda Udis Kessler.
Church where love lives is a safe place for all, where we gather in wonder to remember God's call, to embody God's vision of kindness and care, with each song that we sing, with each protest and prayer. On this sacred foundation of faith and of trust, we are building a world that is gentle and just. We rejoice and repent, offer praise and forgive, and we welcome all people to the church where love lives. The church where love lives draws the stranger inside, making neighbors of strangers, no neighbor denied, till there's heaven on earth and God's will has been done, till the whole of creation is restored to its home. On this sacred foundation of faith and of trust, we are building a world that is gentle and just. We rejoice and repent, offer praise and forgive, and we welcome all people to the church where love lives. The church where love lives is preparing a feast for the pained and rejected, for the lost and the least, for the deeply afraid, for the truly ashamed. Come and sit at our table. Love has called you by name. On this sacred foundation of faith and of trust, we are building a world that is gentle and just. We rejoice and repent, offer praise and forgive, and we welcome all people to the church where love lives. We welcome all people to the church where love lives.
Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we will continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Grace Preuss, a member of the worship committee, and I will be your worship associate today. Other members of the worship committee who make this service possible include Alec Peck, our music coordinator, Adam Wedeking, who is monitoring our visual and online connections, and Kate Lewicki, who is in charge of our sound system. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please. Our Unitarian heritage calls us to recognize the inherent good of all persons, and the Universalist part of our tradition encourages us to extend love and acceptance to all people. You are welcome in this congregation, whatever your identity, your race, faith tradition, or background. Our principles call us to affirm the worth and dignity of every individual and to accept one another and to foster one another's spiritual growth. Thank you for joining us here today. Before we move into the service, there are a few announcements that we'd like to share. We will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will also leave up a slide with all of this information, and it is available on our website. First announcement is for the Thanksgiving lunch that we just had on Thursday. A big thank you goes out to Robert Brown and Dinah Rowe for their hard work in organizing the Thanksgiving lunch on Thursday. And a big thank you also goes out to all of you who contributed to the delicious meal and to all of our volunteers. First Sunday luncheon. Don't forget to join us next week after the service for the first Sunday luncheon. I'm not sure what the theme is this Sunday. Anyone know? Okay, so the theme is to be determined, but show up anyway next Sunday. The silent auction. The silent auction continues in the parish hall. Please bid for goods and services to raise funds for our church. Festival of Lights. The 2023 Mission Inn Festival of Lights will be held from November 18th through December 31st. Downtown light displays will be illuminated from 5 to 10 p.m. UUCR will be open to the public during the festivities, and we will have snack and drink sales, as well as crafts made by some of our members and a selection of gently used Christmas items to raise funds for our church. Donations of snacks, bottled water, and individual packages of hot chocolate are appreciated. Please see Robert or Avery for details. Christmas party. Women's Fed is pleased to sponsor an all-church Christmas party on Saturday, December 9th at 2 p.m. in the parish hall. This is a correction of the date that was printed in the November newsletter, so please mark your calendars as Saturday, December 9th at 2 p.m. Please bring a white elephant gift, which is something under $10 for sharing. Refreshments will be served and are also welcome. So if you have any treats that you'd like to bring to share at the party, please do so. This concludes today's announcements. And now I invite you to sit back and take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. You are welcome to read with me the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. We're happy to welcome today's speaker, Janice Rooths. Janice Rooths, MBA, is a racial equity champion and the CEO of Rooths, an equity implementation firm. She resides in Riverside, California, and is a co-founder of Antiracist Riverside, director of the Center Against Racism and Trauma, and a member of the Riverside Mayor's Bipartisan Task Force, and the 2021 recipient of the City of Riverside, Dr. Carlos E. Cortez Award for championing diversity and inclusivity. Janice has over 35 years of management consulting experience in strategic planning, operationalizing visions, project management, and community organizing. Janice holds a BA in Communication Arts from the College of New Rochelle and an MBA from University of California, Riverside. She has 3 children and a granddaughter. Her current hobby is watching Asian dramas, which I'm sure all of us do. The sermon is entitled, Love, the Superpower. Anti-racism is about facing the hate of racism and working to end it. The only true weapon against hate is love. We have two lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle. The second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first a sacred space of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Cupeño, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. If not, we'll just have a symbolic flame.
Any other symbology like
Okay. Today's reading for our chalice lighting is by Mary Ann Moore. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. So maybe we can just drop stones instead of chalice today. That'll work.
for our former words, for our second words, and for the power of His love.
Thank you, Bill. Greeting our guests. We have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, and so I will now ask for a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you found out about our church. We ask you to step close to the mic in front of the pulpit and speak into it directly and clearly so that everyone can hear. Please be aware that you will be visible on our Zoom camera and in the recording of this service, which is posted online. Do we have any church members who would like to volunteer for us today? Thank you, Adam.
Good morning. My name is Adam. I discovered UUism back in 2008. I was living in Temecula, and me and some friends were doing protests against Proposition 8, which was to outlaw gay marriage in California. And we just wanted to do some rallies there in Temecula, and slowly a group of people started showing up on the other side where we were doing our protests. And then we were shocked to find a church come and join us on our side. We kind of thought they were on the wrong side, and talked to them. And I got a card with our 7 principles on it and thought, wow, this is quite a faith. And so I started going to the fellowship they had in Temecula. And then my schedule changed. I was working Sunday mornings, wasn't able to go. By the time I looked for them, they were no longer meeting. So I met with the Church of the Larger Fellowship, which is a church for people who don't have a local church for a while, until I moved here to Riverside and joined this church. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And that's how it's done. If you are new here, a visitor, or an old friend, please raise your hand and stand to come up and speak in front of the pulpit. If there's, so do we have any people who'd like to introduce themselves this morning? I see a few hands. Thank you. You could just come up and make a line if you'd like. Good morning,
Morning. My name is Casey. I
Casey.
don't really know how to start. Oh, sorry. My name is Casey. I've decided to come here today. I brought my friend Simon with me because this is my first time going to church after like a while, and I was nervous. So I asked him to tag along and he agreed. So that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't really know what to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Nice having you here. Thank you. Welcome. Morning.
Hello, my name is Simon. I've known this church for a bit because I did some activism with Food Not Bombs. So we had the kitchen in here. So that's about since 2021. I'm a philosophy student in school, so religion is something that's very interesting to me. So it's very good to see how it very manifests in different areas and everything. So I'm here to observe as well as help my friend.
Thank you for coming here. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Eduardo Hernandez, and actually, this is the second time I've come to this congregation. I attend UU congregation in Cedar Lane, which is located in Bethesda, Maryland, where I sit on the board of trustees, as a matter of fact. It's always a pleasure to see other UU congregations throughout the country and to just kind of see how things are done so much differently and so much the same.
Mhm.
And my pronouns are he, him, and él. Our congregation sits on the unceded land of the Nacotchtank Piscataway Indians, natives of Maryland. And I think one thing that's different that really struck me right now is that we also acknowledge that we are on the land where Africans worked without recompensation for their toil unrewarded. So we live on this land that was formerly slave-owned land, which is something that I just thought about. Wow, that really is a different, even though I'm a native Californian. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for visiting us again. Nice to have you. Is there anyone else who'd like to introduce themselves today? Okay. If there's someone online who would like to introduce themselves, please raise your hand and we will call on you by Zoom. Let us know who you are, where you are from, and how you found out about us. No one has it. Okay. For any other new guests, please join us for socializing and coffee hour after the service. We'd love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where you can also find our visitors book or sign in on our tablet. Please leave your name before you leave so that we know you were here, and leave your contact information if you'd like to know about upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. Our hymn now is number 121, We'll Build the Land, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand and embody your spirit and join us in singing number 121, We'll Build the Land.
We'll build a land where Stand here, people, oh come build the land, my people we seek. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
This portion of our service is the offertory. Holiday HOS. Today is the final collection for SOS, or Sharing Our Spirit, our annual program to help families in our community in need during this holiday season. All of the income from this fundraiser goes into our designated SOS fund, and our goal this year is $2,500. Please give generously as you are willing and able to this fund today. Please mark all donations to this fund as SOS. You may write this on the subject line of your check or place cash contributions in the specially marked envelopes in the pews and place them in the offertory plates. If you would like to help us reach more families this holiday season, UUCR will graciously accept monetary contributions and donations of new or gently used toys, clothing, packages of underclothes, socks, blankets, toiletries, etc. All monetary donations and donated items are tax deductible. Thank you for your support. So we have also, in addition to our SOS fund, we have the regular offertory. And this portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here, or you may contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is shown here, as well as on the church website and in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. Amazon gift cards are also available. You get the full value of your purchase, and the church also receives a percentage for free. Please see, I think Dinah is not here today. So Bill, you're standing in for Dinah? Bill Rowe or Robert Brown in the church office if you're interested in purchasing the gift cards. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. And to those who give of their time and talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. And to those who are joining us here today, we thank you for the gift of your presence. Will our ushers now please come forward to receive the collection? Our next hymn is number 402, From You I Receive, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand and embody your spirit and join us in singing number 402, From You I Receive. Our meditation today is a responsive reading by Ma Teresa Tet Gustilo Gallardo. Please read with me the bold italicized words that are projected on the slide. We are here to derive meaning in our actions. We are here to win our power back over our areas of powerlessness. We are here to deepen our understanding of ourselves in order to strengthen self-discipline. We are here to abolish prejudice with an appreciation for our diversity and differences. We are here to feel our personal power and our capacity to affect the lives of other people. We are here to become teachers to each other. We are here to spend time away from the usual influences and relearn reality. When God gives me the desire, I am also given the power and means to achieve my goals. I am here to see that my singular life is a gateway to countless possibilities. Now let us pause for a moment of silence and reflection. Now I'd like to introduce Adam Wedeking, who will be introducing our speaker, Ms. Janice Rooths.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm excited. We already heard a very good introduction of who Janice Rooths is. I'm really excited to introduce her to you all. She is the co-founder of Anti-Racist Riverside. And next Saturday, December 2nd, here at 10 o'clock in the morning, we will be holding a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation session, which is a session that Anti-Racist Riverside is trying to do with as many people here in the community as possible to discuss what our current situation is as far as racism goes in Riverside, how we got here, and what we can do to create the world we want to create. And so I'm really excited to hear Janice talk to us all about that process and her involvement in everything. So Janice Rooths, come on up.
I'm short, so anyway, thank you so much for inviting me here. This is not something I usually do. I'm usually trying to facilitate other people being involved in this kind of conversation. So I thought I would start by telling you just a little bit about me and then about, Anti-Racist Riverside, and finally kind of a call to action, right? So about me, the reason this is called Love the Superpower is because love is probably my favorite word. And to the point where sometimes when I'm writing business emails and I'm saying, oh, I'd love to meet with you, it's like, maybe I shouldn't say love, everybody's not really that, informal is what people would think of it, right? Like, because love is such a personal thing, right? But for me, love is a universal agape everything. Like that's how I wake up in the morning. I choose to be happy every day. Yes, I do get mad. I do get frustrated, all the other emotions. But I think that if I can stay in a place where I feel love, it's always a good place for me. So over 50 or more years, I have gone through my own journey to understand others and myself. And this is my first experience with the UU Church. And once I started, after Adam invited me, I, read through a variety of things on the site and the national site. And you fit my sensibilities, right? Because coming from a love perspective, we just want to be accepting of everyone, because I just see so much value in everyone, how much everybody brings to the table. It doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, what their experiences. That's all valuable to me because I am an insatiable learner. I love to talk to people. When I do, I ask so many questions and I go down a path. My gift is being able to see what other people's gifts are. I am from Baltimore originally, so we've sort of traded places, right? But over that 50 years of trying to understand other people, even as like a first grader, just wanting to learn languages and picking books out of the library and not even knowing how to pronounce those words. To this day, in Asian dramas, trying to, learn what you say in a language when you want to say I love you, whether it's something like Korean where you say saranghae, or, Mandarin where it's, why ni. Those things are really important to me. It's one of the first things I want to know when I encounter a new language or a person speaking, a language around me that I haven't heard before. I've studied a lot of things, from astrology to Kabbalah, and all of them wanting to know and understand people better, myself included, but also trying to understand what I can do to leave this world better than the way I found it. And so I want to tell you a little bit about, my racial experience. From a young age, I understood from my parents that I shouldn't go into places where I didn't know where I was. Wasn't sure of who was there, with the direct thought that if you go out in the dark, in the woods, you could get hung. That translated into my experience with my own children, and particularly my son. My son, who wants to, by the way, wants to be a police officer. I can't tell you how that grates against my own soul, but I would never discourage him from doing that. If he succeeds, he may be a great change agent, and that's something that we need. But I do have to caution him about not getting killed, about how he should act. And that kind of leads to the whole, what does racism as a public health crisis really mean, right? Yes, in some ways it's, the chronic illnesses like high blood pressure and diabetes, and but it goes so much further back than that. It goes back to me being young and my parents have to warn me about getting hung. And how does that weigh on you your entire life and for generations, right? So, and then how you pass that down. And does that go down just simply in my words? But our words are energy. There's a book called The Science of Getting Rich. And then the very first paragraph, line, chapter, The most striking thing is, and because it continues throughout the book, that everything begins with a thought. And from a physics perspective, you know, we're all energy. Everything here is energy, right? And just like water or air, you cannot separate from energy, right? We are all connected. It's like the electricity that's coming from the power line. By the time it gets to you, we don't really know where much of it came from because there's a whole grid of power. And likewise in water, right? You drop a drop of ink in water, it's just going to spread throughout. We are connected in such a way that we can't disconnect, right? And from a biological perspective, through mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down from our mothers, we all originated from a woman in Africa. So just sitting in this room together in this country, that makes us all African American. And I think those are some of the universal things that we can take with us when people are trying to be separatist and individualized in a way that harms all of us, right? My parents, my mom lost her father when she was 13. And at that point, they kind of lived out in the country outside of Baltimore. And at 13, having finished the 8th grade, her only option was to go and live with a white family that she knew. And she worked for them for the next 5 years. And then she went to the city where her brothers and sisters were. She didn't have any more education after that, okay? And my father had to leave Virginia at the age of 9 because he was playing with a little white girl and his family realized his life was threatened. And so they sent him off, to Maryland, right? I'm not even sure who he lived with because I never ever met any of his family or how he survived from that age. And even when, he was older and retired, he would read the paper every day. I don't know how much he got out of it, but he couldn't write very well, but he managed to put some words down from what he remembered from being, in the 4th grade, I guess, right? My own personal experience, though, came when I was 15. And I was in junior achievement, and through that was awarded an opportunity to take a Dale Carnegie course in effective speaking. So I went and I caught the bus to the other side of town and was in a class of, 35 to 40 people. Of that, only 3 of us were Black. I lived in a city that was 60% Black, but in that class, I was clearly a minority student, which I had not experienced before, to tell you the truth. There were 2 boys, 2 Black boys, and one of them had a car, so his parents were affluent, and they came and went together. And mind you, they never asked me if I needed a ride. So I caught the bus one day on the corner, waiting for my bus to go home. A yellow school bus comes down, and as they get to the corner where I'm standing, I can hear people yelling out the window. And then a pair of glasses is thrown out and lands in the street. So it's a group of what appears to be, maybe young white boys about my age, like a baseball team or something, right? And then, so the bus has to turn the corner and stop so that, the kid can get off and get the glasses. And as I stood there, the glasses were in the street, so they could have gotten run over by a car. And I kept thinking, should I pick them up? Should I not? I wear glasses. I would feel horrible if my glasses got run over and I was, trying to get home. Anything, if my glasses got run over at all. And so finally, I picked them up because I thought for them to throw his glasses out of the bus, he had a much worse life than me. So I picked him up. He came over. I gave him to him. I don't recall if any words passed between us now. Just, that I gave them to him. I have no recollection what he looked like, what he had on. But it made me realize that as an adult, that racism hurts us all. That clearly, even though our country was built on anti-Black racism, everybody's being hurt. He certainly was. And that was, he wasn't, I don't know what his intentions were that day, what his thoughts were that day, either before or after we met. But I do know clearly that because people who did not know me, had never probably ever seen me before, because I certainly didn't see anybody on there I knew, didn't like me. Now, mind you, I didn't really hear exactly what they were yelling out of the bus. I just noticed that they drove up, I could hear shouting, and then I saw glasses come out. But what was his experience before, during, and after that? And it breaks my heart because I love people. I love all kinds of people. I love all the people I don't even know yet. And how could people treat people like that? Now, mind you, bullying is we talk about that now very openly. In the past, it was like, oh, well, you learn how to fight, right? But this was a severe case, in my opinion, and he was probably experiencing that every day. And when racism rose its head, he was unable to get out of harm's way. And I tell you that as everyone in the country, white, Black, every culture, we are all being harmed. And maybe when you think of, racism and that it has harmed so many of us that came from enslaved histories, or persecuted histories, or colonized histories, consider the harm that is also being done to people who just are also here, but not from those backgrounds. So what we traditionally call, white people in America. My other experience was quite different that I wanted to mention. And that was when I was working for IBM and going through training. While in training, a young white man my age, who I did not know, came up to me, and I don't even know why I picked me, because there were other Black people around. But he came up to me and he said, my father told me I have to work really hard in this class and in this job because the Black people who are in these classes with us have to work twice as hard just to be where I am. And at that point in my life, I didn't really know that. I knew something was different about how I had to operate, how I had to sound. And even though I didn't speak a foreign language, I had to speak 2 languages. I had to speak my community language, and then I had to speak the business language. But for someone to tell me that, that's sort of an insider secret, that you don't often get to hear. And it made me understand that all of us were going through something very different than those in power. And I really appreciated that he said that to me, because he said it to me in a very sincere and heartfelt way. And that's how we need to treat each other, right? There shouldn't be secrets, because there's no way for us to end racism while there are secrets. So Anti-Racist Riverside came about because I just got tired. And sometimes you just get tired. I had gone to a training, and Anti-Racist Riverside really believes in learning and doing. And I had gone to a training called the Racial Equity Institute Phase 1 workshop in 2018, actually in Rockville. And Adam just recently went through this particular class. And it is probably like concentrated detergent, right? In terms of it's giving you so much of the history of how we got here. It's a, you know, drinking out of a fire hose, you know, and at the end of it, I felt like I wish I could get this training to all of the leaders in Riverside. I had gone through the Chamber's Leadership Riverside some years before. And I could see that there were people who meant well, and I could see there were people who just didn't care, that there were other issues in the world preventing us from being the best possible individuals and community we could be, right? But I just, you know, I came back, I had really didn't figure out a way to do that. So I found something in the city called the Inclusivity Statement. Now, this was 2000, by this time, 2019, the Inclusivity Statement was 10 years old. And it was a great statement, but it wasn't a plan. So I went about trying to convince the city they should make this a plan. I wrote a proposal and submitted it to the city manager's office. Nothing happened. I started to speak at council meetings. Nothing happened. And it's interesting because it was just before COVID, right? But there were a number of incidents that occurred right after I started saying, would you make this a plan? The students at King had a picture on Facebook with all kinds of things, swastikas and the like. And the Riverside Unified School District brought like 30 community leaders together, including city manager and chief of police and all kinds of other organization heads together to say, we understand this with students, right? And there's only so much that a school and a district can do. This is a larger community problem and we need your help. And to that, everything that I can tell, there was no response. And then another incident happened at the middle school up the hill as well. You know, calling out the N-word in the courtyard. They were chanting, no less, yeah. So, and so after that, I came back and said, look, you know, I told you we should do something before anything happens. Now, multiple things have happened. And so no response. And then of course, in March, COVID shutdown came about. So I just let it go. But in May, when George Floyd was murdered, I felt frustrated again. And even though we had not had an incident like that since Tyisha Miller was killed, it didn't mean we didn't have issues, because we do. So the council decided that they would declare racism a public health crisis. And I thought, okay, now what? And so I spoke in my frustration and said, I've talked to you multiple times about what we should do, even before all of these things have happened. And I can see that, you know, there's either you don't have the resources or whatever, but I will gladly do this myself. And as I finished that public comment, Leah Stewart called me and said, let's talk to Regina Patstell and do something. And that's how Anti-Racist Riverside was born. And we started first reading books like How to Be an Anti-Racist and The Color of Law and The Sum of Us. And then, we started to try and do some other things. And I'll talk to you in a minute about TRHT, or the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Process. So we still do try to get books and the Racial Equity Institute training implemented, because we have to learn a variety of things. One, we need to all know the real history of our country, and not false narratives or fantasies. Columbus did not discover America, right? The Greeks did not create geometry. If they had, there would not be pyramids. And so we need to learn, and we need to learn kind of a language that we can also level set and speak with each other about, and that's why we really like the Racial Equity Institute. They have something called the groundwater approach, right? And when you see others who have been in the class, you can kind of reference that and understand, that most of what we give to people and try to do to help people and even cure homelessness or racism or anything else is what we call feeding fish, right? But we're not fixing what the problem with the lake is in the first place. And we're definitely not fixing what is polluting the lake. So having a common language really helps us get to the point more quickly, right? The other part of Anti-Racist Riverside is the doing part, which I'll talk a little bit more about TRHT, but not a lot, because if you come next week, then we'll talk about it and we'll do it. We recently had a family dinner, and I know Adam was there. I don't know if any of the others of you were there, but it was sort of a introduction conversation to race and racism, and just having people around food to talk about that is extremely important. If you haven't already read Heather McGee's The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together, I encourage you to. It is such a definitive way of understanding how we are all harmed, how you are all harmed, right? That none of us escapes the oppression and terrorism of racism. There is something called emotional vibrations, right? And at the top of the emotional vibration ladder, if you want to call it, is love, then joy, and at the very, very top is freedom, right? And then down below are things like fear and anger and shame, right? And as long as we have to experience fear that is caused by something or someone else, it makes it so much more difficult for us to be at love or above, and we certainly can't feel free, right? So it's important for us to try and feel that we cannot just receive love from others, which I loved everything that was up here, right? But also being able to give love to others, even to people we hate, even to things we despise, because it's about the understanding. There's a little tune called the 4 Agreements, right? One of which is don't take anything personally, right? Because we don't know about the experience of the person or group that is saying that, even if it's about us, right? It is coming from their experience. And when someone does something harmful to you, you wonder why, right? especially if you haven't done anything. But Kabbalah teaches you that you should also ask, why was that person chosen to be the one who was meeting the harm, right? And we have to think about those kinds of things. We do. And if we can have compassion even when there's hate, we can grow our superpower of love. It's not easy, but then nothing in life is really easy except maybe eating, watching TV, right? All those things that can numb us. So about TRHT, the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Process. We picked it pretty much for two reasons. And I'm not sure who brought this to Anti-Racist Riverside, but we felt like it was actually a comprehensive way to figure out what do we do about racism in the city of Riverside. And we're using the most simple part of the process, and we'll kind of step our way into the more complex things. But it was funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation in 2016. They funded 14 cities, and some did well, like Buffalo and Battle Creek, Michigan, and some didn't, like LA, who actually had to give most of the money back. We're not funded to do this. We're not even a nonprofit, really. We don't have that kind of an organization, but we have some funding that was given to us by both Leah Stewart and the Inland Empire Community Foundation. And Parkview Legacy Foundation is the fiscal sponsor for us. So they hold and manage our funds. But this process, this Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation process that Kellogg had put together came from research all over the world of countries that did the Truth and Racial Healing process, right? I believe South Africa and Germany and other places in the world, right? We've never done that in our country, right? We've never had a truth and reconciliation or racial healing process here around enslavement or even Japanese internment, right? We've never done any of that. We've had some apologies at times from different people in power, but mostly nothing, right? We're kind of left to our own devices. So my vision for this process is very simple. Next week, it's 5 questions. You'll go through each one and answer them. It's about your vision of a Riverside without racism. And then, how do we get here, right? And what is it like now? Who do we need at the table? And then last, what should we do, right? So you just get to walk through that. What I'd like you to do in preparing is to think about how you were harmed. What do you fear? Part of the reason we bring this is because you shouldn't fear talking about racism. You shouldn't fear walking past Black people on the street or, whoever it is, in an elevator, wherever. And it's not just Black people, sometimes just young people. You shouldn't fear people or things that are different from you. But you've been all trained. We've all been trained to fear in this country, and that's the terrorism of racism. The TRHT process is a way in which to give everyone in the city a way to be free of that fear. and maybe it will help relieve you of other fears as well. My vision is to have 80 to 100,000 people in the city go through this process. I think somewhere in there is the tipping point. And I will be truly satisfied when I am standing in the supermarket line and I hear someone ask someone else, have you done that TR thing? You know what they're talking about? Racism, right? Because now it's a little bit pervasive. And I think that's where the tipping point is. Because we cannot fix a problem that we can't even talk about, right? So let's see, I want to make some points here. Train your superpower. It is very easy for us to love our grandkids, our best friend, right? But it's a little harder to love people we don't think we like. Maybe skinheads, maybe politics of people. But we all have something to bring to the table. And sometimes, you know, where you hear this, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Sometimes we do have things in common, but I submit that we always have something in common. We all want to be somewhere where we can be happy, where we don't have a fear for our safety, where we don't have a fear of other people, where we feel valued and always able to participate in the process. So we need to develop our superpower. You know, one of the things that I'd started doing, I don't know how old I was, but I started repeating a mantra that to myself of, I must not be judgmental. And so it helped me over the years to, most of the time, not be judgmental, but also to be aware when I am. Because I don't have a right. You know, Stephen Covey has a story that he uses, I believe, and I can't remember which habit it is now, but where you see a man on the subway and his kids are running around acting crazy, bumping into people, and the man is just sitting there kind of looking like he's dazed. And the person next to him is perturbed. There's a lot of noise, the kids are running around. And he says, don't you think you should say something to your kids? And he looks at him and he says, I'm so sorry. We just left the hospital and their mother just died. We don't know what other people's experience is. And so judgment is the first way we start to hate people and what they believe. So we have to counter that. We have to counter that with love. And we can build the superpower by becoming collective with our power, right? Coming together to fight, which is what the UU Church is all about, right? But teaching others how to come together with that as well. So again, I'd like to ask you for next Saturday to think about what it is you fear and how you can help cure your fear by anti-racist work. So what I want to say is, in closing, that I love you. I love you all. I love Riverside. I love all the new people I meet. I am really grateful that you've chosen to do the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation process. And I hope that once you experience it, you will try and find ways to push it out in families, in schools, in other churches, in your community groups, wherever you think you can. I don't care if it's 2 people or it's 100 people. And if you need my help, I'm always happy to come out, or someone from Anti-Racist Riverside would certainly come out and help to facilitate. I would also like to invite you to next Saturday after the TRHT. Anti-Racist Riverside is having its second annual Celebrate Collaboration over at the Civil Rights Institute from 2 to 5. There will be food there. If Anti-Racist Riverside invites you somewhere, you will always be guaranteed to get food, okay? That's how we flow. So finally, just thank you very, very much for having me here. I don't often have an opportunity to speak to people, and usually when I'm with people, like I said, I'm so curious, I'm asking all the questions. But I really appreciate and am grateful that the UU Church exists, and that you will be involved in the TRHT process. So you all have a wonderful day, and thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Our closing hymn is not on our matrix. 1028, The Fire of Commitment. Please feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand and embody your spirit and join us in singing 1028, The Fire of Commitment, and I believe it is in the teal hymnal. Thank you.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of the living brings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
We shall overcome. When we can truly celebrate the diversity of contributions and talents offered by all people, we shall overcome hatred and prejudice and oppression. When we can truly extend our hands to one another in loving acceptance, we shall overcome the past that haunts us now. Living in peace and freedom, we shall overcome the wrongs that have happened and the debts left unpaid. Let us join together in that commitment to overcome. Let us say together, amen. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Janice, for sharing your valuable time, experiences, and insights with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to hearing from you again. For those of you who would like to stay in the sanctuary for 10 to 15 minutes for questions or to share some discussion or observations from the service, please remain in the sanctuary or online. And be aware that these comments will be posted online. For the rest of you, you are now welcome to adjourn into the parish hall and join us for further fellowship. Thank you for being here. So now I'd like to invite Janice back up to the pulpit and hear any comments or observations that you may have had.
Hi.
I'm very concerned about the many voices from all sorts of areas that seem to suggest that they believe strongly there is no racism. What do you say to them?
I've heard those same comments. I've heard people in City Hall during public comments stand up and say there is no such thing as racism. I would love to have a conversation, a one-on-one conversation. I hope that in time, through some of these processes, we will be able to develop narratives that show the opposite to be true. But the people who say this haven't heard. I mean, they haven't been deaf to things like environmental racism. You know, they've heard these terms. They just don't want to believe, right? If you live, it's like we live here in the Inland Empire. We live in one of the worst breathing spaces anywhere, and certainly in the country, right? That breathing space is not confined to minority communities that live around warehouses or whatever, right? The air goes all the way up to Overlook, right? Where all the $1 trillion homes are. But the people who live in those places try to say that economics trumps the day. And truthfully, capitalism runs the country. There's no doubt about it. We started that way. This whole country was started as a capitalist endeavor. But to forsake your own health by saying environmental racism doesn't exist, and you live here in the Inland Empire, is just you wanting to be blind to the truth. And you know, I don't know exactly how you cure blindness, but I think you can only do it by coming up with the right messaging and giving the people who believe that an opportunity to talk with the people who believe otherwise. And I'm hoping that that's part of the extension of what Anti-Racist Riverside will do in the coming year, is to start to have conversations with people and organizations that don't believe in racism. So that's the best I got for you. crisis.
You mentioned that racism is a health issue. What was it?
So something like 40 different governments across the state of California, there are plenty more around the country, but have declared racism as a public health crisis. The Riverside County, San Bernardino was the first in the state to do it. I think then Riverside County also has a resolution that declares racism as a public health crisis. And the city of Riverside has a resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis. They talk about things to be done in those resolutions. And actually, the best resolutions have, from 6 to 9 different elements that should be addressed in any community. But I don't think the people who put these on paper really understood the depth of what that meant. In some cases, I think they were just trending so they could avoid being called racist or not having one. And in some cases, I think people really understood, right? Yes, there are indicators. Like I said, there are, indicators like chronic diseases, from asthma to diabetes to high blood pressure, right? There are outcomes from systems as well, that, you have education gap, environmental racism, you have, health, you need health equity. It's just, you name a system, right? But again, to these deeper things that have happened, like, what is it that the Japanese community feels after internment? How does that carry on generationally? You feel the need to remind because it could happen again, right? But likewise, enslavement, the same thing. Decimating the Native population across the country. From what almost could have been up to 300 million at a time. I mean, 30 million at some point. Now there's 2 million, right? Why is that suicide and alcohol problem known to everyone, right? Why is that a problem? How did that happen? But I think in all of this also, they don't understand that this is also severely impacting the white population. The rise in suicide numbers, the rise in, overdoses, the white population's rate of death is higher than everyone else's at this point, and particularly with suicides, right? So this racism thing is a public health crisis, not of just people of color. It is all of us. And so, we need to educate our public officials, whether we have to figure it out and then go in there every week or however often they meet and let them know, you haven't done anything about this. It's killing us, all of us. They always make decisions based on money. If there was any group or sector that runs almost every place in the country, it would be developers. That's why we don't have enough housing. Well, there's even more business than why we don't have enough housing, but it is because developers run governments. So how do we stop that? Right.
So it's related to then health inequity. Is that
public health? And yes, public health inequity. So public health is is disease is medical, but it's also mental health. It's also, the types of, again, the chronic things that are derived from, asthma, from, poor air quality, right? Or all kinds of things like that. Yeah, so it's public health. It's communicable diseases. COVID was a public health crisis for sure, right? So, yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Grace.
First, I want to say thank you for your wonderful service as well, and thank you for the church for hosting us. So before I start my question, I just have a little comment. I'm a Filipino immigrant, and one thing that happens when you're an immigrant is that like you come from a place that you don't necessarily see anymore. So my question is, with colonialism in mind, how do we know and love what's invisible, basically? Because you said love is something we all have power in, but also these problems of racism and of colonialism aren't necessarily in our eyes. In everyday lives, we don't necessarily see it. So how do we like know and love this kind of stuff?
Right. One of the most important things I wanted to teach my kids was to be lifelong learners, to be curious, like insatiably curious. I think we have to try to free people to be curious, right? We cannot fix a problem that we cannot define, describe, or know of, right? The unknown unknown is the worst. And so it's incumbent upon those of us who know to continue to spread the word. And for ourselves, we have to be continuously introspective and try to figure out, what is it that I don't know? What is it that I don't listen to or watch? I remember when the night of the insurrection, right? And I am not, listen, I almost watch Asian dramas exclusive to anything else. I don't watch the news. People have to tell me what's happening in the world often, okay? Because I find the news so depressing and just sometimes just false, it doesn't matter who you watch. But that night, I decided to turn on Fox News because I wanted to see, well, what are they saying about this, right? And I found the coverage to be pretty much the same as what I saw in other places, on other channels, because I flipped around. But what disturbed me was I saw a group of Black people who had on, Blacks for Trump t-shirts walking around in DC. And it was disturbing to me, right? And my first thought, and I really needed to come up with that, I must not be judgmental part of me, right? But it didn't even occur to me. I mean, occasionally I would see someone, listen, the entire time he was in office, I didn't watch anything that he did, okay? I don't know if I'm the only one in America who did that, but I didn't. But from the debates or something like that, or something going across the screen, I'd see maybe a Black person here or there. But I couldn't fathom what were they doing, okay? But if I didn't look at that night, I wouldn't know, right? I wouldn't know, because we tend to think that, people who are like us think like us. But none of us are like us. And all of us are like us. And so what I don't know is my problem. I should be out there searching, right? I mean, if I know what quantum entanglement is, and let me tell you, I didn't do more than high school physics, but I'm a nerd. I love things like that, right? If I know what that is, regardless of how I found out, I should be doing a lot more environmental scanning to figure out what else is going on out there. Because there's a lot. For everything, every possible way in which we can be harmed, there are people promoting it. And some of the things they promote do multiple harms. And they don't care who it hurts. It might seem like racism is a true all-class collaboration among so-called white people, but the truth is, it's that 1% who makes a lot of money off of all of the rest of us, who profit from us not, being one. They can't beat us collectively, but if they make us separate and they make us hate each other, then they have a process. They've been using it in this country for over 400 years, right? So yeah, how do you love something and you don't even know about it is, for me, I love the world I'm in. I feel a responsibility to make sure I leave it better than when I found it. And as I encounter things and people, then I try to figure out at that point, what do I do? And honestly, you will do your best work if you just pick your thing and go with it, right? Even if you don't listen to the news or anything else, if you pick your thing and go with it, the 100% you give will net results. So that's kind of where I would say you go.
I'm glad you brought up the 1% and the developers, because I was hoping to hear it earlier in the service. Not many white people, percentage-wise, are of the 1%, or the developers, but our tax system is biased toward distorting the economy in favor of the few that take advantage of the fact that property values go up because it's undertaxed. And it causes a business cycles which inflict damage upon the whole economy and enable the 1% become the 0.5%. We've got to think in terms of Jarvis, in terms of how our economists, when I went to UCLA, got UCLA School of Economics to graduate school, the chairman of the department, Edward Leamer, took me aside and asked me to drop out by innuendo, by saying you're not going to get a degree here. And I said, why is that? Didn't you read my paper, my letter of intent, about how when I was 7, I saw all the homesteaders' houses in Mexico, trip there, and saw what incredible impoverishment there was there, and said I wanted to learn how to cure poverty in the third world. And he said, yes, I read it. You're never going to get a degree here. The economists are all bought and sold by the tax system that undertaxes property and overtaxes labor and capital too. It's not just labor, it's capital. And the capital and the labor suffer 20 to 50% decreases in their pay relative to what the speculators make. We've got to end the speculation, taxing speculation. That money that they make off of property belongs to the mass. In a biblical sense, God gave us a property increase, a property value. And it doesn't belong to the speculators. It belongs to all of us. Until we realize that, we're going to have racism as a divisive element. It's not along racial lines. It's around economic lines.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Wow. So we live in a capitalist country. Okay. We live in a so-called representative democracy, right? We elect people who are supposed to represent our interests. But in fact, if we don't watchdog them, we will have no interests because generally speaking, they do what people who have power and influence ask them to do, or maybe tell them to do. I don't know which of those it is, but this is so complex. It's actually called the wicked problem because it feels like it doesn't have a solution, and that there are so many aspects of it that that it's hard to untangle, right? To get down any particular line of how do we do this. But there are ways, right? And to unravel something that's tangled, you just have to start at one end of it and follow the thread through. Or you just throw it away and you create something different. I think we have to do both. People in California, honestly, it's not just California, but clearly we live here, so we can see it, right? Self-interest is always the first thing, right? And we're not exempt from that, right? We get up, we eat, we do whatever we do, we go back, the variety of things that we do are really based on our self-interest. I mean, anti-racism work is a self-interest of mine, right? Given that I give that amount of time that I do to it, I exclude other things that I don't think are necessarily as important, or I might think they're important, but that's not where I want to do, where I want to go, what I want to do. Capitalism is so thoroughly threaded. It is the net. It is the basis of the world we live in. And I say world, I'm not talking about state, city, country. I'm talking about world. But that doesn't mean we can't do anything about it. One of the things we could do is start our own cooperatives, right? And put land and assets in it so that the collective of the people in the cooperative can benefit from it. We need to do more, literal bartering. Every time the financial system has a hiccup, a burp, or whatever else, usually the poorest people get hurt, and then anyone who has money invested in a mutual fund or bond or whatever it is gets harmed, right? And it's a place where lots of people, including myself, will put your retirement funds or whatever else, right? You're trying to grow a nest egg to buy a house. And so I have a friend named Michael Schumann who believes in local vesting, that we should take our money out of those big funds and learn how to invest locally where we actually benefit and figure out ways that we can do that, even to the point of trying to create our own local stock exchanges or, we could actually have a public bank. Our city, Riverside, could have a public bank. It would take some doing, but it would then give them the funds to be able to work with developers to ensure there's affordable housing, right? Because the process now is ridiculous, right? Yes, let me say this about the taxes, because I know you brought that up. The tax base on property for California is sort of unrealistic for California, but as you grow older, it becomes extremely advantageous, right? Why should I be paying taxes because my house is now valued at $500,000 and I only bought it at $100,000, and I intend to live here for the rest of my life. I have a fixed income, all of those things, right? I lived in New Jersey for a little while. And they had, the town where I lived, and most places had what I thought was crazy property tax process. People, a couple of years before I moved there, they hadn't assessed home values for like 15 years or something. And when they did, people who were paying like $2,000 a year suddenly had to start paying $12,000 a year. Now, I moved in, it was already high, okay? I moved into a home that was like, I don't know, $610,000, and my taxes were like $13,000 a year. Unless you own property, you don't really know what that means. But in California, you're never, you know, right now, you're not going to pay more than about 1% of your property value when you buy it. And it stays that way until you sell it. But we have to both fight what's going on, and we also need to make ways that it can't impact us as much as it does. Some things we can't avoid. I can't avoid the taxes I pay at the gas pump and the grocery store or wherever else I go. But I think we have to figure out ways to support ourselves so that we can live better.
Well, if property was taxed higher, the prices of property would not go up. You may not have a $500,000 house because of nothing you did. You might have it because you earn more in your job. But your tax would stay the same level on your property and it wouldn't be going up. We wouldn't have the cycle where it all comes back down.
Okay, last question. Okay, last comment.
Very good. Thank you very much. It's always nice to hear somebody from Baltimore.
Thank you.
Speech, and it really is really nice to see this congregation participating in the process.
Right. Yeah.
As you use, we need anti-racism work. We're like every other congregation in this country. We're going down in numbers.
Right.
We have congregation churches that are closing.
Right.
And I can tell you that the UU congregations that are around the Beltway in Washington don't look like the community. Do not look like the community. They're overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly either middle-aged or above an age category.
Right.
So if we don't do something quickly, and I mean the next 5-10 years, more of these are, and some of them are already thinking about dismissing the ministry. Saying that, I am pleased that at a national level, we seem to be getting the message.
Okay.
Like 2 years ago at our General Assembly, which is our annual conference, the keynote speaker was Kenji Ibrahim. Okay. We now have a president of our association who identifies as a multiracial Black, Latina, queer woman.
Okay.
Right. As the president.
Right.
Right. Leading us as we go forward. But I find, we oftentimes get a little smug with ourselves. We're Unitarians, we're progressives, we're liberals, we don't do those kinds of things. We did a survey at our congregation and we found out there was a big difference between what the BIPOC people said and what the majority congregation said.
Right.
And it wasn't just the message. They said, BIPOC people said, where they felt most unease was at coffee hour. That the whites went into the little cliques after service,
Right.
and they felt like they no one talked to them.
Right.
That was very interesting. So we continue to move on with this. We continue to work with this. This year, we've been really trying to learn more about the Native Americans
Mhm.
that lived on the lands that we occupy back there.
Right.
There's another principle, as a matter of fact, eighth principle, which commits us to anti-racism work.
Right.
We adopted that along with other congregations, and it's been a challenge to continue the work here.
Mhm.
We have a minister who is a African-American trans person,
Mhm.
and he chastised us last week. Why is it so hard for you to say they when you're talking about?
Right.
Again, it's like, this is daily, because unlearning all of the homophobia that I learned growing up here in California in the 50s,
Right.
and all of the classism and everything else is hard. So thank you for your work. It's really, and I wish you were back there still. Come on back there and give us a hand.
Well, thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Yeah, listen, I am glad I have children because they keep me abreast of what I should be knowing. I mean, just you asking, how do you know what you don't know, right? How do you know? And if I didn't have kids, I would have no idea. I have, I struggle too, I raised a baby girl up to her 20s and she's like, okay, this is my name now and I'm they. And I'm like, okay, let me try to get with the program, right? I don't have an issue with that. It's just that I'm used to addressing you for like 20 plus years a certain way. I'm your mom, So she has grace for me. And I think that's what we in general have to do. I think also we need to figure out the ways that we get more young people in the room. Okay. And, this should be an activist space. This should be a known and published activist space. And so should your church, right? This is not just come in and pray, meditate, what it is that you do for your sense of spirituality. Most of what I read from the 7 principles and 6 sources is all about justice and doing the work. And this is a gem that it should be full in here every day because people are here working on doing something. This should be the hub of wherever you are, whatever city UU church sits in, right? Because that's what this is about. And yeah, we sing hymns and we, kind of do some meditational things and do things that are related to spirit. But without spirit, who are we? I'm not asking you to believe in God per se, but there's something about you that when you are gone, it's gone, right? And that has to be nourished and grown. And working on these kinds of things in the community where you are is how you grow them. So if you can figure out ways to get more people in the seats, let's do it. Let's do it for sure. Thank you all very, very much.
Okay, so now we are adjourned for further fellowship in the parish hall. Thank you for being here.